Hey guys, Nikki here, and welcome to another edition of Calling the Card, where I try to predict wrestling's biggest cards weeks in advance. Now, full disclosure, I have tried to make 2 Calling the Card videos about WrestleMania 33, and for one reason or another, while I'm editing the video together, something happens that just completely destroys the plot, and frick. First time around was around No Mercy, and The Miz losing the IC title to Dolph Ziggler just completely destroyed it. Like, there was a lot planned around that. Then I tried to do it again around Survivor Series, but Goldberg beating Brock threw everything off. So it's been kind of a long road, and now we're pretty close to WrestleMania, and most of the card seems pretty obvious at this point. So instead of going with WrestleMania 33, how about I try this for the other big WWE event that weekend, NXT Takeover Orlando. Now, the most recent takeover in San Antonio was a shockingly good show given how little build it had, to be quite honest. Like, there wasn't all that much of a build to it, and it turned out like gangbusters. So, seeing as how this takeover is in Orlando, NXT's backyard, I feel like they're going to bring their A+ game for this event, and they're going to need a good card for that, and I got a couple of ideas. Now, let's start off with the 2 most over guys in NXT right now, Shinsuke Nakamura and Ty Dillinger. They're not going to have a match, don't worry. That would be dumb. But no, basically, Ty Dillinger has lost again. Like, he is now 0 for 6 all-time at takeovers. He lost to Baron Corbin at TakeOver Our Evolution. Then he lost to Apollo Crews at TakeOver Brooklyn 1. He lost to a returning Sami Zayn at TakeOver London. Kinda. They were still in London, but it was the week after. It was like dark match stuff. Then he lost to Andrade Almas at TakeOver The End. Then he lost to Bobby Roode in Toronto. And now he's lost to Young in San Antonio. And he's despondent. Like, he was already in a bad place before. Now he's just in a full-on rut. And he needs help. He needs somebody who has won before. He needs a winner on his side to basically guide him towards success. And so Dillinger goes to basically one of the most winningest guys in NXT, 2-time NXT champ, Shinsuke Nakamura. He wants help from Nakamura. And Naka thinks about it, and he goes, okay, I'll help you if you help me. I've got a title match coming up with Bobby Roode in a few weeks. So until then, I will help you. I'll come down to the ring with you and coach you. And in return, you come down to the ring with me for my title match to make sure Bobby Roode doesn't try any funny business. And they accept. Seems like a fair trade. So over the next couple of weeks, Dillinger has matches with basically enhancement talent, like Kona Reeves or Wesley Blake, Steve Cutler, those guys. And all throughout the match, Dillinger's doing well, but Nakamura is watching this very intently. He's still limping, by the way. His knee is not 100% yet. But he's very focused on the match, and he's shouting out pointers to Dillinger, and whenever Dillinger does this, he gets success out of it. And of course, Dillinger wins those matches. Dillinger has his confidence going back up. Then we get to the NXT title match. It's going to take place on television, but they're going to build the shit out of it. Like, remember when Nakamura versus Finn Balor had like a 3-week build to a TV match? Basically, same principle. So, Nakamura and Roode have their match. Dillinger is in Naka's corner. And I think that'll create an interesting dynamic because Roode has a ton of history with Dillinger. So that could make the match a little bit more interesting. So, we get to the end of the match. Nakamura is about to set up for the Kinshasa. He's been selling his knee throughout most of the match, but now he's ready to finish off Roode when all of a sudden, Sanity attacks Dillinger. They still have it out for him. They still want to beat the tar out of him for turning them down. And they are beating his ass. 3-on-1, just throwing fists at the guy. Naka runs out of the ring and starts throwing out Kinshasas left, right, and center. But he's using his other knee. That's the important thing. He's trying to keep his injured knee from taking any more damage than it needs to. But unfortunately, you still have to plant with the injured knee. And on the last Kinshasa that he gives to Eric Young, he tweaks it a little. He doesn't go full on selling like, oh, it's falling off! But he is noticeably gimpy, and he gets back into the ring, sets up for the Kinshasa on Bobby Roode, but Roode's able to roll him up, grab the tights or whatever. 1, 2, 3. Bobby Roode beats Shinsuke Nakamura. The next week on NXT, Ty Dillinger is super apologetic to Nakamura. He goes up to him backstage and is like, I'm sorry, I got my personal business involved with you. This is my fault. And Naka just stops him. Stop. And goes, this is Sanity's fault, not yours. And we're going to make Sanity pay. So, at the Takeover, it's Shinsuke Nakamura and Ty Dillinger versus Sanity. Specifically, Alexander Wolfe and Killian Dain. Damo. Now, there's a couple of reasons I would have it be these two. Number one, you got to start building these guys up, and they'll have had wins over a couple of enhancement tag teams over during this build, but Eric Young is going to be busy doing something else. So, now, one of the rules of professional wrestling is that on your last match in a company, you're supposed to put someone over, and that usually means taking a loss to them. But I don't think that should happen with Nakamura. And by the way, this will be Nakamura's last match in NXT before he gets called up on the SmackDown after Mania. Basically, there's other ways to put people over in your final match, like, say, being in a tag team with them. So at the end of the match, Sanity starts trying to use their numbers advantage to get the win, but Nakamura cleans house, takes out everyone who's not legal in the match, leaving just Dillinger and Wolfe. Dillinger hits the tiebreaker on Alexander Wolfe and gets the pin. Dillinger has finally gotten off the schneid and has won at a takeover event. And in the end, Nakamura raises his hand in victory. Everything is great, and you can finally start building Ty Dillinger back up. And hopefully, around SummerSlam weekend, you could have Dillinger versus Roode for the NXT title. He'll be ready then. Perfect. And also, Nakamura can go up to the main roster. And Sanity, well, they're not going to take too much of a hit in the power rankings because of a loss to Shinsuke Nakamura and Ty Dillinger. They're big. So, they'll be fine. They'll be able to compete for the tag team titles very soon. Next up. Now, a lot of these takeovers have the debuting match of somebody. And this next takeover, I think, will be the debut of Aleister Black, a.k.a. Tommy End. Now, we did see Tommy End during the UK tournament when he fought Neville. That was cool. But this is going to be his official NXT debut, and he's coming in as Aleister Black. I'm kind of iffy on that name, but I think it's just because Tommy End is a fucking good name. I don't know. So who's he facing in his first match? Hideo Itami. Now, Hideo Itami has been out for a pretty good while now. But I think that WWE is basically going to realize maybe we should get this guy to the main roster pretty quickly before he fucking falls apart. So basically, he's going to have a brief last stint in NXT, have a couple of matches, and then put over Aleister Black on the way out so that he could go up to Raw and either compete in their mid-card or cruiserweight division. Take your pick. And yeah, at the takeover, Black goes over Itami. That's fine, that's fine. Although I'm not sure whether or not they want Black to be a face or a heel, but given a name like that, I would imagine a heel. So Itami would work for that. Now, Sanity took a loss in the first match of the card, so let's give them a little bit of momentum back by having Eric Young versus Roderick Strong. Now, the whole thing with Roderick Strong has been Roddy versus the world, which is, okay, that's not the greatest tagline in the world, but we'll go with that. So, Sanity basically goes to Roddy and talks about how they are the world, and how the world is chaos and disorder, and basically just trying to get under Roddy's skin. So they end up having the match at TakeOver. It's nice and stiff, bam, bam, bam. And Sanity just basically runs over Roderick Strong. They look very, very dominant during this match. And Eric Young picks up the win over Roderick Strong. Like, I know that the last two really didn't have that deep of stories behind it. NXT doesn't have super deep stories for all of their takeover matches, but they do for some of them. That's why I went into pretty good detail on Naka and Dillinger versus Sanity. But these other two matches, they're there for building people up, which is kind of what NXT is for in the first place. So, now we move on to the 3 title matches. Takeovers typically have 5 to 6 matches, so we've got 3 non-title matches, and then all the titles being defended in the final half of the show. So let's start with the women's title. Now, I struggled on this one, because I didn't know whether or not to include Nikki Cross in this match, because she did look pretty good in the 4-way match at San Antonio, but in the end, I decided to make the women's title match one-on-one, Asuka versus Ember Moon. Now, Ember Moon, so far, has been great in the ring, but her character has been really inconsistent. There's really not that much to her character besides the fact that she has red eyes and screams a lot. It feels like she's basically just cosplaying as some dark entity or something. But now she's going to be going up against Asuka. And because of that, I want her character to basically go supernova. During the vignettes for her debut, like they imply that she has these crazy supernatural type powers. And in order for her to beat Asuka, realistically, Asuka has run through everyone. And she has looked dominant. So if you're going to beat that, you're going to have to bring something extra. During the build towards the takeover, we've basically already established that this match is probably going to happen either with or without Nikki Cross. I think that in order for Ember Moon to have a chance, I think she should have enhancement talent matches every couple of weeks, but every couple of weeks she gets more and more angry and vicious, and maybe starts showing a little bit more of that dark side. Until we get to Takeover Orlando, she comes to the ring in full face paint and just a warrior type look. Make it look like Ember Moon is ready for the fight of her life, because that's what she's going to need to be in order to fight Asuka. And at the event, Ember Moon pulls off the win. Now, part of that could be a Goldberg-Lesnar effect, where Asuka is basically taking Ember Moon lightly. Because in a post-match interview after San Antonio, she basically blew off Ember Moon. Asuka was like, "She works here?" Like, she has no idea that she existed, or at least acted like that. So she might just be playing this Ember Moon character down. So if she were to lose in Orlando, you could play it off like she basically caught Asuka off guard. And at that point, Asuka has dropped the title, she can go up to SmackDown, and everything is aces. I want a lot of people to go to SmackDown. It's a thin roster. They need help. And on top of that, Raw has way too many women who need to be protected, so yeah. Go to SmackDown, Asuka. They could use your help more. Next up, we have the NXT Tag Team title matches, and this is going to be a triple threat match. The Authors versus DIY versus The Revival. These are the 3 big teams in NXT right now, and it's implied, nothing has been confirmed yet, but it seems like at the Tag Team Turmoil match at Elimination Chamber, that seems like it's going to be the time when The Revival makes the jump and basically takes the tag titles off of a wounded American Alpha. That would be good, but at the same time, the NXT Tag Team division is really, really thin at this moment. Basically, it's just the Authors, DIY, and The Revival. TM61 was there, but Shane Thorne just went down with a 7 to 9 month injury, so that kind of got thrown out the window. And I would have assumed that this TakeOver match would be Authors versus TM61, or TM61 would involve in it somehow, but that's really not happening at this point. So I will say that it would be a triple threat match. Revival is still salty about losing the tag titles, and they basically just want revenge. And here's the thing about this match. It's going to be two people in the ring. So if you want, you could basically stay out of the match for the entire duration right up until the end. So I could very easily imagine the Authors and DIY going for the first 10 minutes of this match, and the Revival not tagging in at all, just because that's the Revival thing to do. But in the end, I will say that DIY wins the titles back by pinning the Revival. Now, this does a couple of cool things. Number one, it takes the titles off of the Authors without having them lose. And number two, DIY is basically the only face tag team in NXT. So they kind of need to win the titles back if you were going to put the titles on anyone else. So I would say have DIY surprise everyone and win the titles back at TakeOver Orlando. Maybe have a rematch with the Authors where they pull out a sneaky win, and then down the road, maybe at TakeOver Brooklyn 3, they drop the titles to Sanity. TakeOver Brooklyn 3, keep your eye out for that. That, I think, is going to be when Sanity begins their rise to power. Keep an eye on that. And finally, we get to the main event. Who is Bobby Roode going to be facing for the NXT title? Well, again, in a post-match, behind-the-scenes thing, they were showing Shinsuke Nakamura being helped to the back, and then out of nowhere pops Kassius Ohno. Why was he there? That's a little odd, considering that he hasn't made his televised return yet. Bit odd. But Kassius Ohno basically came up to Shinsuke Nakamura and was like, "This sucks. It shouldn't have happened like this." And it seems like they're going to create this story about Ohno basically avenging Nakamura's loss. So starting next week, we've got about 8 weeks of build between now and TakeOver Orlando. So we need to start building up Ohno pretty quickly, which means no enhancement talent matches. Ohno basically needs to be hot-shotted to a title match pretty quickly. So in his first match, in his return, he beats Elias Sampson. Then in his next match, a couple of weeks later, he beats Andrade Almas. After each match, Ohno calls out Bobby Roode, being like, "You injured my friend, you took advantage of a bad situation, and now I want revenge on you." They'll come up with a better script than that, I promise. And after the second one of these, Roode comes out and basically just says, "No." And then walks right to the back. Ha ha ha. Then next week, Roode is having a promo in the center of the ring when Ohno crashes it and is still hounding Roode for a title shot. And he makes Roode a deal. He says, "Bobby, pick an opponent. Any opponent. And if I beat him, I get a title shot. If I don't, I'll stop pestering you." And Roode basically goes, okay. He's got somebody in mind right away. So next week on NXT, it's billed as Ohno versus a mystery opponent. And that mystery opponent turns out to be Samoa Joe. This is Joe's final match in NXT. He's putting over Ohno on the way out. Ohno gets the win in a very nice and brutal match, and Ohno gets a title shot at TakeOver Orlando. And at TakeOver Orlando, Ohno does not get the win. Oh no! Had to be done. Had to be done. I'm sorry. But Bobby Roode picks up the win over Ohno at TakeOver Orlando. Now, this is basically being done so that Bobby Roode can start being built as a dominant champion who does take advantage of bad situations, but he's not a chicken shit. He's an opportunist. Maybe have a rematch between the two at the Money in the Bank takeover, and then at SummerSlam, you have the match against Dillinger. That sounds like aces. So that's pretty much it. You could throw in a couple of dark matches, like, say, Almas versus No Way Jose, Nikki Cross versus Liv Morgan, Elias Sampson versus Wesley Blake or something like that. Like, there's room for a couple of dark matches, but I think that is a card that is worthy of a WrestleMania takeover. So that's it for me. Make sure you follow all the Haymakers on Twitter and such. Give this video a like, and I'll see y'all later.